join us for another exciting discussion on Choices Global, a production of First Assembly of God, Georgetown, Guyana, and the diaspora. In this first installment of Road Safety and Traffic Management, we will commence a discussion by examining what currently obtains in Guyana and parts of the diaspora, and then explore innovative solutions for road safety and managing traffic, while addressing how we all can become better road users. Traffic management is one of the most pressing challenges of our modern world in our rapidly growing cities and bustling urban centers. Navigating the intricate web of roads and highways has become a daily test of patience and efficiency. Our panelists in our discussion today are doctoral student and youth director of the Assemblies of God Guyana, Reverend Winston Asana, medical student and youth advocate, LaShonda Kelman, community and youth leader, Marissa Messiah, all joining us from Guyana, Mr. and Mrs. Corbin, who work and reside in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm Dr. Salisha, joining you from the US. Welcome, panelists, to our discussion today. Movements in our cities and towns have become increasingly complex and, in some instances, dangerous. However, there are cities around the world that have adopted simple to complex measures to ensure that movement is safe and the daily commute is smoother. To start us off, we want to engage what currently is happening in Guyana and how we can address those issues in this program, and then we will continue the discussion in a subsequent episode. At the end of August 2023, over 100 persons lost their lives on the roads in Guyana, including teenagers and children. What can we as a nation of just over 700,000 citizens do immediately to arrest this carnage? And Marissa, as a youth leader and a community advocate, a community leader as well, what are your thoughts as we start this program?
That is one of the major things that people have. Leave home half hour early or to accommodate for traffic, etc. We've had some interesting occurrences happening. For example, one day the bridge was closed. I think it was closed for repair for a 2 or 3 day period. And traffic was flowing on the eastbound corridor into the Georgetown, Guyana. And there were no major accidents reported for that period. Now, what I'm saying by that statement, I'm clarifying, is that there is something that happens when we are able to pace ourselves and have free flowing traffic. And this has to
Mm.
do a lot with probably congestion of the vehicles on the roadway. So it seems as if, from a layman's perspective, once there's congestion on the roadway, that there is during rush hour, there is usually a very high or very an increased probability for accidents and major accidents to happen. There is also something that we must address as well, and this is the culture that seems to pervade of drinking and driving. Unfortunately, a lot of young people and just Guyanese in general would go out and would have fun, but there is no designated driver. I think we need to have a training on what a designated driver is and the role of the designated driver. Because you would find, especially among young people, they would say, oh, the designated driver probably has a 1 or 2 drink minimum or maximum. And that shouldn't be the case. The designated driver is someone who does not drink and who is not on any sort of drugs or any sort of inhibitors, so that they can pay attention to all the things that are happening on the road and be obedient to all the traffic laws. So we need to address the culture of drinking, and we need to also address this understanding or cultural understanding and application of a designated driver. Um, there is also speeding that happens on the roadways. Now, some people say put more speed humps to prevent speeding. However, as a driver who does not drink on the roadway, it is extremely encumbrant. It's disgusting sometimes, the height of the speed bump that are being put, because they cause damage to the bottom of the lower cars. The frequency of the speed bumps along any stretch of road sometimes can be too much, and it causes drivers on the road now to divert to off main roads or secondary roads to go to these tertiary streets that are probably just like a little inner community street. Now that street is not accustomed to the traffic flow, and that street is like most, children are out, or people may in rural communities, people may have animals and that kind of thing on this street, because it's a tertiary street. It's not a street that is necessarily built to have the kind of traffic that is now diverting onto it. And because of that, now, the street was not necessarily built with that focus. It accidents happen. They happen to vehicles. They vehicles might encounter parked vehicles or animals or children, unfortunately, or adults. Um, and then, of course, there is the one that happens out of everybody's concern, out of everybody's way, which is like some people are in their homes, and uh, one thing happens, whether it's due to speeding or speeding and inebriation. So there's an add-on or a link on, and a car appears in the house, and those things can cause not only damage to infrastructure but damage to individuals. But it means that we as Guyanese, we as road users, have to be a little bit more cognizant. And I'm going to say it emphatically. If you leave home earlier, or let's address timeliness. Timeliness will help. However, it, it does not cater for the other driver on the road. You're not the exclusive driver on the road. And so we need to bring back caution, care, and those kinds of considerations back into our vocabulary and action as drivers, so that we could better be able to contribute to road safety.
Thank you so much, Marissa. What several things were mentioned in how we can minimize the carnage on our roads. And Reverend Hassan and Lashonda, what are your thoughts on a culture of timeliness? Marissa mentioned it at the beginning of her discussion. And do we as a people practice this? Would this help to avoid unnecessary speeding to arrive at our destination? Reverend Asana, and then I'll hear from Lashonda.
Thank you, Dr. Salisha. Um, in third world countries, generally, we go to the event, not necessarily go on time. Once we get there, um, for some reason or the other, it's good enough. However, I find, especially in rush hours, as you get on the road, that idea seemed to reverse. You would have left late because you know you're going to the event. And somehow, somewhere, a competitive attitude develops, and the pressure of the event comes upon you. So there is now a rush to the event. And so we have in our culture in Guyana this kind of, there are several things, and I would like to name them, that heightens the issue of timeliness. For example, you end up among other road users, and you now become a bully. So there's lots of bullyism. For whatever reason, you may use, I have to get there on time, I have to make a certain amount of trips, I have to do this, I have whatever it is. And so you find, as a result of the disregard of time or disrespect for time, there's bullyism on the road. And depending on the size of the vehicle you're using, or who you think you are, the extent of the bullyism um, will be demonstrated. Some will have to go into the corner, they push you into the corner if you wish to avoid an accident. Some will say, knock me down, jump me, those kinds of Creole expressions. There's also, as a result of the lack of um, respect for time, I also find that there's a heightened demonstration of the lack of skill. So you see the competencies or lack of coming out as a result of that same culture of disrespect for time. You find that folks don't have a sense of lane driving. Some don't have a sense of signs and how to use them. Some just know that you drive, and once they can move their vehicle, that's it. You also find that, um, in my experiences, as a result, I don't know where this one has come from, but there is a sense that if you use some kind of substance, it will heighten your skill and it will better enable you to maneuver the difficulty, which in essence is the reverse. But again, you see that on the road. And so, as a result of this regard for time, there's a great sense of recklessness, a culture of recklessness. Doesn't mean that every time when you leave on time, you will get there on time. But in many cases, with a heightened number of vehicles on the roads in Guyana now, there is this sense that I will leave whenever I can, but once I get on the road, I will
Mhm.
get there at all costs. That, to my mind, is dangerous.
Indeed. Lashonda, your thoughts? Thank you, Reverend Asana.
Adding to what Reverend Asana would have stated, I believe that we have gotten so accustomed to being late, to being in that rush, that it has now become an addiction. So if it was up to us to leave early, we're so accustomed to the speed, to the thrill, that it becomes uncomfortable if we decide to cruise along the road and take our time to get to our destination. And that the idea of timeliness, it leads to behavioral uh, change that will need to occur in order for us to transform the way we use and operate the road, the way we see ourselves get into an event, and also the way we develop skills, the way we understand our roadways, the way we read signs, the way we are courteous with each other. For example, um, accidents on the roadways are not just limited to vehicles, but they include pedestrians. And one of the complaints that pedestrians would make is that vehicles would not stop for them. Whether it's a lack of them being observant or it's just that they are always in a rush, that has shown, sorry, that we as a people need to do better when it comes to being courteous drivers, and that we need to be more vigilant on the roadways. While timeliness is not the only cause of major road traffic accidents, I believe that it is one of the major causes. Because what you find is that persons, and just the other day, there was a video circulating where a guy, he was overtaken and a truck was coming on the opposite lane and he was still overtaken. He ended up crashing into that truck, the bike caught fire, and unfortunately he passed away. another video where the traffic police was calling traffic. He stopped the lane, but a person on a motorized bicycle did not heed the traffic police sign and she continued and ended up in an accident with another car. Luckily, she was uninjured. So that goes to show that one is it's not necessarily that we don't have the necessary infrastructure placed or available, but some sort of recklessness on the roadway. We're always in a rush, we're always in a hurry, not necessarily because we're late, but we are addicted to this go, let's keep going, let's keep going, no time to stop. And as a result, we think that we are invincible. As a result, we end up being reckless drivers on the road. And this
Mhm.
causes more harm than good for us as a people, as a population.
Mhm. Thank you, Lashonda. And as I listen to and as we listen to each other, I listen to Marissa, Reverend Hassan, and Lashonda. It's very sobering to think that we will actually be deliberate. And I say we're all Guyanese on this program. And what happens in our nation, even though we're away, like Kurt, Chevron, and I are in the diaspora, we still feel for what happens at home. And you want to kind of imagine how could we be so callous, so careless, and when it comes to even our own lives, like the guy who didn't stop when the police said stop and lost his life. Kurt and Chevron, I know we're more in a developed in a developed countries. What are some key strategies you would want to say can contribute to to a cultural shift in this regard as it relates to that culture of or disrespect for time?
If you allow me to go first in this case, Dr. Salisha,
Mhm.
thank you for the question. Um, I've been listening as well as you, as to all of our panelists, and it's kind of frightening in a way to look
Sure.
at this. What we're talking about is it's a culture, and every nation their cultures, and in this case, we're speaking about this culture of time or lack of timeliness or a respect for or lack of respect for time. And I would like to see this change. I would like to
Mm-hmm.
see us value each other more. I would like to see a culture of care. That's the culture I would want to leave, not the culture of timeliness or lack of or respect, disrespect for time, but a culture of care. How do we treat with each other? And I know we say, oh, Guyana is known for its kindness and the persons are warm and they look out for each other. But it's not only in the marketplace if someone drops their purse or you're helping someone to cross the road, which I doubt we do now based on Lashonda's example recently. But I would like us to see, I would like us to develop a culture of care where we deliberate, where we step out, where we take responsibility. That's a big word, self-governance. Where we take responsibility to do what is right. We've studied, or we should have studied the laws. We went to write the exam, and we did the theory, we did the practical, and to do those things, we had to read what the law says. There were questions, and we know what the road user should do, what the road signs mean. The road signs are not merely a guide, but they're instructions that we must follow, we must obey. You see a pedestrian crossing, we slow down. We see a child at the road, we slow down. We The person behind has to slow down as well, not look to undertake and overtake. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a culture of care. If we have a culture of care, we can save so much more, Madam Moderator. We can save on production time. If we leave to go to work on time, we can do more. We save money that would be wasted. How can we save on money? If there's an accident, that accident will destroy the car, maybe even you, your recuperation in the hospital that's going to cost a fee, the doctors, the medicine, everything adds up, and it adds up to significant amounts. If we damage the post, the lamp post, if we damage the median on the road, the government has to find this money that was allocated for something else that has to be rediverted now or diverted now to this new accident because one of us or two of us weren't careful or two of us choose to race. So can
Hmm.
we stop this and can we inculcate a culture of care? I think that is one of the
Hmm.
things, Dr. Salisha.
Thank you. Siobhan, your thoughts?
No, I think I want to echo what Kurt has said and what the other panelists have said about us inculcating this culture of care. But another perspective that I've seen is that for us, and I think Reverend Hassan alluded to us, we look at the event. And in this case,
Hmm.
I want to say we look at the event of the accident. We don't go beyond that. And what we see in Europe is that they look at the concept of mobility. They are looking at mobility in terms of us getting to work, us getting to visiting family on vacation and on weekends. They are looking at moving not only people, but goods. And they are also looking at tourism. And I believe that this speaks to not only Guyana, but for any other country and any other citizen or person who may be viewing this program produced by our church. And I think we need in Guyana a common vision where we, as both the citizens and the government, work together to appreciate not only road safety, but the mobility elements or vision that we have for our country. We are going to be tagged as not a developing nation or a low income nation, but soon we'll be tagged high income. And with that, it comes expectations that when tourists come to our country, they want to feel safe. We as citizens must demonstrate that not only do we have the financial resources, but that we are concerned about the well being of our citizens. And well being speaks to mobility, me feeling safe when I move from home to office, from office to my social events or to family. When I welcome tourists, when I welcome conferences, if we as Guyanese want to hold more than just the cricket tournaments, we want to go beyond that. We have to be prepared to deliver this kind of safety, not only to the tourists, but for us as well, for our own well-being. I think another thing that we need to take account of is that when we have a poor record of traffic safety, it impacts us as Guyanese, those of us working and living abroad, but even our ministers of governments and officials, including persons like Reverend Asano, who may travel overseas for ministry or an assignment. If we have a poor record, it means that our citizens can't get international driver's license. And as I wrap up, I just wanted to quote some statistics because Kurt mentioned that we need to go beyond the accident. And one important thing we need in Guyana is data, relevant data, timely data. I am here only able to quote the 2016 estimates. And this is coming from the World Bank Group, the Global Road Safety Facility. It paints a picture. It says that in Guyana, 85% of our road crashes, fatalities, and injuries are impacting our economically productive age group. So 85% of our activities are impacting persons who are productive citizens between the ages of 15 and 64. It also says that we have a 4-to-1 ratio, male to female, in terms of accidents in the 15 to 49 age group. So our young productive people, 4 males to 1 female in accidents. Sometimes we wonder where our men are. Some of them have passed away because of accidents. And then it talks about 856 life years of affected persons due to disability. And this is where I said we see the accident, but what happens beyond? Sometimes when they measure data, they don't only consider road accident as the person who died on the spot, but persons who have died even within 30 days after the accident as a result of the injuries. So, Salisha, I want to stop there. There's a lot more statistics that I can share. Another thing that it says is that for Guyana, we lose around 25 out of 22 to 25 in every 100,000. And you have countries like Switzerland, where we reside, who has 8 times our population and their death to 100,000 population ratio is just about 3 persons. So clearly, there are opportunities for us to be aware of what is going on, but obviously for us to now frame some of the solutions.
Well, thank you very much, Siobhan and Kurt. You see, we begin to, and I like how you talked about we see the accident, we see the tragedy, and we report on the tragedy. So even our reporting systems and mechanisms focus on the tragedy. No one looks at what led to that tragedy. No one looks at the other contributing factors. And we make a very huge crime. The city gets all emotional about the tragedy, not realizing and recognizing that there are several other factors that contribute and that were contributing factors to the tragedy. Um, the statistics are just blown away, because that's 2016. We are in 2023. The gap in the data that is not available quite yet. What could it be now, seeing that the road carnage has increased tremendously in our nation? And truly, it's not just a person dying as a result of an accident, or a post, a lamp is torn or roads are destroyed, but look at the impact it will have eventually on us. And it's also very critical we begin to look at it holistically. This is not just about one tragedy, or several tragedies, or people, the loss of life, but look at the impact it will have on us, on Guyanese further down the line, who are now in high schools, who are now trying to get a driver's license or get certified in some way. How can educational institutions, family members, and mentors play in instilling care, caution, common sense, those 5 C's that we were taught when we obtained our driver's license in Guyana? Those 5 C's of rule and law and compliance. Reverend Asana, as a youth director, and one who's involved in um, youth mentorship, also as well, Lashonda. How do educational institutions, family members, and mentors play a role? And Chevron and Kurt, I'll ask you as well to talk about that. What role do we play in ensuring that we move from this disrespect, disregard for life, limb, and time, and how we can begin to see the bigger picture?
Thank you, Dr. Salisha. Indeed, we have identified the decline, and I believe the source of the decline has come about from um, the lack of teaching, the lack of mentoring. We have taken this matter and have made it a very casual issue, like has been described by my colleagues, Pastor Kurt and Minister Chevron. What must we do? We have to go back to the old landmarks. We have to return to making road safety a daily issue of discussion. I remember the days in the classroom. I remember the days when at schools you had schools traffic. I would describe them as schools traffic cops. They carried a yellow ban. I hope I call the correct name, but they were trained to assist fellow students to cross the road. I believe for us to change culture, we have to model it. And from top to bottom, we will have to demonstrate and consistently remind the population this is the way, this is how it is done. Follow me. Every time I drive now, I tell myself I am driving to save lives. I am driving to save lives. By simply doing that, it brings into focus care. It brings into focus consideration. It brings into focus common sense. It brings into focus caution. It brings into focus courtesy. Those are attributes that allows us to control that vehicle as a means of transportation and not as a means of as a weapon, not as a means to kill lives, to kill not just myself but fellow road users. So I encourage us to teach and to model the 5 C's.
Closing remarks, Lashonda.
Well, before we even step into a vehicle, before we even learn to drive, we are first pedestrians. And I believe that, especially in the school and family environment, if we can first teach persons how to properly use the road as a pedestrian, how to properly cross the road, how to properly walk on the roadway, that in itself can reduce some amount of accidents that occur. Once we understand that the roadway is not ours to own, but we share it among with other persons, we would realize that whether we're driving, we're walking, we're riding a bicycle, a motorcycle, whatever mode of transportation we're using, we have to be very cautious in how we do it. Um, Defensive driving must return to our roadways. We mustn't simply decide that, okay, today I'm going to go at 100 miles an hour because I want the thrill of it. We must be considerate of those other persons who are using the roadways, those other drivers, those other pedestrians. We must think about how best we can accommodate scenarios. So we can't predict that, okay, if today I go on the road, it will move smoothly. But we have to take into consideration, okay, if I'm at a pedestrian crossing, I have to stand and wait there, be patient. I just can't run in front of a vehicle and expect that vehicle to stop all of a sudden. If you're driving a vehicle, I don't expect the vehicle to magically stop if you're going at 100 miles or 80 miles, magically stop at a traffic light and it won't skid or you won't lose control, especially when it's raining or downpour, the road is wet or there's sand on the road. These are things that we have to take into consideration when using the roadways. What elements out there that could be harmful, that could hinder safe a safe experience on the roadways? How best we can accommodate our driving, our walking, our cycling, so that we may be able to prevent any accidents, any incidents, or any injury to anyone on the roadway.
Thank you.
And
Curtis
Dr.
Chacon, you're
Salisha,
wrapping up. Mhm.
thank you. Lashandra, thank you for that. Um, and it's not just, I want to build on what you said, Lashandra. It's not only about us being careful with the cyclists and the pedestrians and so forth. It's about the cyclists and the pedestrians also looking after themselves. I remember as a youngster growing up in Charlestown, there was campaigns. Policemen and women were out. There were campaigns for the bicycle. It has to have the front light and the back light. The red light at the back, the front. My mother had a bicycle, and it had this thing we call a generator that would you would press a button or something, and the transformer thing they call it would touch the tire, and as you pedal, these things. Where did these things go? I remember the guys used to be running through Evans Street and so on. The police when the police have their campaigns. Can we not bring back these things? The cyclists have to protect themselves. Over here, we call it the developed country. You have to buy these reflective vests. You put it over your backpack and you ride. Everyone rides, especially in Europe. You have the reflective vest. You have the light. You even have a headband with a light on, and so motorists can see you. Pedestrians have their lane. It comes back to planning as well. Everyone has their space where they are, and no one encroaches on anyone else's space. The stats Chevron were quoting, I remember reading that stat as well. And in that same year, 2,850 persons were fatally injured, not fatally, were seriously injured. 2,850 persons were seriously injured. Compounded with the deaths and that year, 2016, and those persons that were almost 3,000 persons. Are you aware that the cost for those fatalities and those serious injuries was over 287 million US dollars. That is the cost. Dr. Salisha asked before, what can we do to change? $287 million is equivalent to, in that year, to 8.2% of our GDP.
Mm.
What are we doing? This is only, we have to look, repair, bury people. This is where $287 million went in 2016, 8.2% of our GDP. What are we doing? That's why we need statisticians to bring this figure together. It's not just an accident, Dr. Salisha, as you said, Siobhan.
Well, for me, Kurt, I would want to land by saying we need vision, we need education, as Reverend Hasana keeps reminding us, and we need legislation. Legislation in the sense that I was driving in Geneva going to the lake. I don't think I was speeding, but the report came to my home that I was driving at 57 kilometers per hour in a city area. So city center means you have lower speed limits. The speed limit was 50. I was at 57. They give you 10% allowance, so they give you up to 55. So my 57 meant I was 2 kilometers over the grace they had given, and I had a penalty of 40 francs. 40 francs is equivalent to 40 US dollars. There's no argument, you have to go and pay. So legislation meaning that it's clear what the speed limit is. There is a way of enforcing it with fines and you comply. And there's no one to go and bribe when you pay. You just have to go to the post office and pay. You're not even going to the officer or the light that flashed you. So that's one example. I think I said education. Education is what we're doing on this program today. Education is not left to the Ministry of Public Security, who I think has responsibility for traffic management. It's the schools, it's the churches, it's the non-governmental organizations, and it's the family unit. Reverend Asana is a mentor of youths. And he has a huge part to play because many young men and women are walking around. They don't have a father in the home. So we need mentors like Reverend Asana who provides that initial guidance to a young person who's striving, who's done well at CXC, done well at CAPE, has gotten a good job, can afford a vehicle, but we have to ensure that that doesn't convert into them losing their life out of the blessing that has been given to them. And the vision, like I said, is also understanding that if we are a developing or a developed nation, which is our dream for Guyana, that it requires us to have higher standards than we currently do. We must understand our own well-being and that of persons who we want to invite to our country as a signal of our development. And I want to leave us with the one comment around well-being is that sometimes it will also mean having a mass transportation strategy. In Europe, we own a vehicle, you hardly use it because you push to public transportation. We in Guyana don't want to walk. In my office, the executive director of a $14 billion company gets on the public transportation. I can see us saying it's too hot. I myself like the pleasure. You know, it's also the status symbol of having arrived with your fancy SUV. But when I talk about the vision of mobility, it goes beyond us just getting into our cars. It goes beyond the education and legislation to having that broader understanding that we have to come up a bit higher. And I think this is where God expected us as the church to bring this kind of value to the community. And so I applaud the producers of this Choices Global.
What an accelerating yet sobering beginning of today's conversation. Regardless of our location, we're all road users. It's essential that we extend the same respect to others that we desire for ourselves. Whether you're walking, driving, cycling, or using public transportation, let's prioritize respect for both ourselves and fellow road users. By doing so, we can work together to ensure our safety. Mark your calendars, September 24th. when we'll have the concluding episode of Traffic Management and Road Safety on Choices Global. I'm Celicia, reminding you to always be kind.